Oh, so now we are here today because we want to learn about how to do a conference call with your phone. So that in the discussion about, what do we want to learn today, right? We want to again talk about how we can use our iPhones to stay connected and engaged. We want to talk about using the iPhone for completing a conference call. I'm going to present to you what I refer to as the conference call two-step, and it is your recipe for making a conference call with your phone. And we're going to go through a demonstration of the process. I recruited a volunteer from our community to answer the phone so that we could demonstrate a conference call. As a follow-up, that's only going to take us 15 or 20 minutes to go through that whole process. And then we're going to address a follow-up question that I had from the session a week ago. And that is, one person in our community asked if there were any tips for creating contact records, quickly entering contacts into your contacts app. And so there are a handful. I'm going to give you one, though, as a way of getting started. And then we're going to wrap up this session. I'll remind you about how you can ask those follow-up questions. I will also talk about what's coming up next. All right, so that's the plan. All right. Now, our housekeeping rules, these haven't changed. I want you to imagine that we are a group of, there's about a half a dozen of us at this point. We are a group of folks that are just sitting around the kitchen table, and we want to show you some things on your iPhones. Very easy, very casual. Just want you to sit back. If you've got your coffee cup, don't hesitate to use that. In this YouTube environment that we're doing this, I want to remind you that I cannot see you. I cannot tell how long your hair is getting. I cannot tell what you're wearing at this point, nor can I hear you. The other platforms, some of the other platforms like Zoom have the ability to do more two-way video conferencing. But this particular strategy, I can't see you, I can't hear you. So just sit back and relax. However, just because I can't hear you or see you doesn't mean I don't want to hear from you. In that, if you have a question during the session, there is a chat on the right side of your YouTube screen, or you might have to click on the top chat button at the bottom. And it does require you to log into YouTube in order to chat. You can send me a question. I'll be monitoring that, as we go through. Or you can send me a text message to the number that you see on the screen, and I put that number down at the bottom banner. All right. And so I will be testing or checking for those text messages as we go through. Or for that matter, if you have a follow-up question, something that you missed, or if you have any other comments or recommendations about future topics, send me an email, and you can just send it out at questions@seniortechclub.com, and I promise that I will get back to you. All right, so those are the housekeeping rules. We are here today because we want to talk about conference calls. Now, textbook definition of conference call. It's a telephone call in which someone talks to several people at the same time. I didn't make that one up, by the way. It came right from Wikipedia. Today, with our isolation, many of the video platforms are getting all of the attention. And it's true. We talked on Monday about using FaceTime in order to stay connected with people. There is going to be a future topic where I'm going to talk about Zoom and maybe some of the other platforms that allow us to connect visually. But regardless of the fact that those platforms seem to be the rage today, there is still a place for conference calls. Now, I'll give you some examples. There are some business examples. I'm still surprised. We will occasionally watch television to hear the Minnesota governor provide his COVID-19 updates, and he, particularly since he was self-quarantined in the governor's mansion, that he was doing those updates via telephone conference call, and that's usually how they exist today. There are conference calls for financial results for businesses. There's conference calls for training. There is still a place for conference calls. I'll talk more about that in just a bit. One of the differences with what the iPhone can do, back when we used to use conference calls in business, we would oftentimes employ a third-party service, or we would employ some special equipment to do these conference calls. We don't have to do that with what the iPhone offers us. So what we're going to be looking at today is the ability to do a conference call without any special equipment or without any service. All right, so why conference calls? Well, conference calls are still great for organizing events or connecting with the entire family. With your iPhone, it's free. I've already talked about it. The iPhone gives you the ability to connect up to 5 callers. The reality is there are many people that just can't do video calls, right? So that's why there is a place for conference calls. I think of my 98-year-old mother-in-law. She would not be able to do a conference video call. But if the family wanted to talk with her, doing an iPhone conference call is very achievable. When you do connect those users do not have to be iPhone users. Anything that you can dial up. So that could be a landline. It could be, family members that have gone to the dark side and are Android phone users. There's no limitation. So you can connect any 5 people. I also talk about how the conference call is actually a great way to show off some of your iPhone skills. Right? If you get comfortable with this process, you can raise your hand and say, "Hey, I'll set up a conference call," and you can do it. It is not difficult to put this together. All it takes is a little bit of practice. Pull a couple of people together, do a couple of practice sessions, and you'll be organizing these conference calls too. All right. So how do we do it? Well, the good news is, no special apps. You can use the phone app directly. There is a process. There's a recipe. I refer to it as the conference call 2-step. Right? And so earlier when I showed you the full recipe of doing a conference call, this is the label that I've used for it. So that if you can remember the conference calls 2-step, you don't need the instructions, the written instructions. Right? So now what are those 2 steps? Well, step number 1 is add call. Step number 2 is merge calls. Right, so if I can verbally walk through the process here before we take a look at it. So here's what that process is going to look like. You're going to make the first call. So there's always a starter call. And then you're looking at your phone. Right, you're looking at the call screen on your phone. There is going to be an icon that's labeled add call. You tap on add call. You can then call the second person. You talk to the second person and you say, "Hey, I've got another person on the line." You go back to the phone and you tap merge call. At that particular point, all 3 people are talking together. If we want to take that one step further, you could add a 4th person to the call by typing add call again. You dial up a 4th person, talk to that person. "Hey, I'm going to bring you into the conference call." Merge calls. Now you've got 4 people on the call. So that is the conference call 2-step. All you have to remember is 1, add call, 2, merge call. All right, so what does it look like? All right, so let's walk through the process. And by the way, we're going to do a demonstration of this too, so you can see it. You can see it live. All right. So the process, step number one, you're going to make the first call. All right. And so you call. The example that I have on this slide is I'm going to call Joan, my wife, and I talk to Joan and say, "Hey, Joan, let's bring Tessa, our daughter, into this call." And at that particular point, I would look at my phone screen and I would tap add call. And you see add call on the PowerPoint. So you tap add call. At that particular point, you have the ability to make another phone call. So in this case, using favorites in the phone app or dialing a number or using your contacts list, you call the second person. In this particular case, you can see on the screen that I have now two calls on the line. One is on hold. By the way, Joan kind of went on hold when I made the second call. It wasn't an official hold, but that add call process put her on hold. Um, I now have Tessa, my daughter, on the line. And when I want to bring all three of them together, I will tap merge calls, and that will bring all three of the calls together. It's that easy. That's the conference call two-step. Add call, merge call. All right. During the call itself, all right, so now you can be talking on the phone. You could have the conversation with all three people or four people, total of five people, right? You can have that call. And now let's say you need to manage the call, all right? And manage the call might be you want to drop off one person because you want to have a private conversation with one, or you might actually want to have a private conversation with one of the people. When you do that, there is going to be a circle I. Now, circle I is the label that I use to describe what you see on this slide, where the circle I is the info link, and that would be adjacent to where it says conference. So you could tap on that info link, and that would then give you a screen that looks like this, right? So imagine this was four people on a call. I also brought my son into the process, my son Matthew. So from this particular screen, I could end the call for any one individual without dropping the whole call. So, if I was in a position where I wanted to say, "Okay, Matthew, we're done with your part of the conversation. I'm gonna end it for you." I could tap on end associated with Matthew, all right? Or on the other hand, if I wanted to have a private conversation with Joan, I could click on the private button and then have a private conversation with her. Right? Okay, so let's do a demonstration of this. I just want to walk through the process one more time. All right, so I'm going to make one call first. I'm going to make it here in just a second. You can make that call any way that you want. You connect with that person. You just say to that person, "Say, I'd like to bring another caller, into this call." And you then tap on add call. That'll put the first caller on hold. Then using whatever mechanism you want, you can make the second call. And then once the second caller answers the phone, you can say, "All right, I've got a conference call going and I want to bring them all three together." And you tap on merge call. And at that particular point, you have a conference call in place. All right, let's do it. So the first person I'm going to call, and by way of full disclosure, this is actually a phone, my Android phone, sitting right at my side here. And so I'm going to call a person by the name of Sally Student. All right. Now, let me arrange it just a little bit. Okay. All right. So now what we have is I've got my slide deck on one side. I've got my phone on the other. So, this is my live phone, right? And so now I am going to call Sally Student, right? This is just a demo student. And just to be a little fancy, I'm actually going to use Siri to call her. So, hey Siri, call Sally Student.
Calling Sally Student home.
All right, that phone actually is right next to me over here. All right, so now I have connected with Sally student. I could be talking to Sally at this point. I'm going to pull this down here. And I could be talking on speakerphone. I could be saying, "Hey Sally, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well." All right, and then I might say, "Hey Sally, I want to bring um, Susie into this phone call. You remember the conference call two-step. There is add call on the lower left. And so I can now do add call. At this particular point, whatever vehicle you use to make calls, I'm actually going to go into my favorites. And here is Susie Noel. And I'm going to call Susie. By the way, Susie was a volunteer to this. I reached out to my community and she volunteered to do this. I'm not going to ask her to speak. She's just going to answer the phone. So here it goes. Notice my phone. Sally Student is now on hold. And hi, Susie. Thanks for answering the call. I'm going to hang on here. All right, so I'm back into here. And now notice that there is a merge call. So I can tap on merge call. And at this particular point, I now have a conference call with Sally and Susie. Right? Now, if you remember the circle I, if you needed to manage this process, I can now tap on the circle I, and here are the management tools, right? So that I could end the call with either one of them, or I could have a private conversation with either one of them. I'm just going to go back. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to end the call for everyone. All right? That is how you do a conference call. One call, tap the add call button, do the second call, tap the merge call button, and you then have a conference call running. It's really simple, right? If you have any questions on that process, do not hesitate to send me an email. Even if you just wanted to practice, right? If you were saying, I really don't have a good person to practice with, give me a call, send me an email, and we can even set up a practice time where we could arrange that to happen. All right. I have one additional topic that I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on. And this was specifically related to a follow-up from our text messaging. As we have explored all of these tools for staying connected, whether it's text messaging or FaceTime or even this conference call, it is clearly advantageous that you have your contacts, that is your names, your email addresses, and your phone numbers, that you have them into the contacts app. Now, on the surface, you might say, well, I've got 100 contacts and I've got them written down in some kind of paper address book. Does that mean I have to enter all of those contacts manually? And well, yeah, probably. But there are a couple of ways to shorten the process. And so I wanted to give you one tip in order to shorten that process of entering a contact. Right? And the tip is one of 6 methods that are actually in this senior tech recipe on the website. So if you remember at the very beginning of this conversation, we went back to that live 3 screen way down toward the bottom. I showed you the online recipes for these. And so adding and finding people in the contacts app is one of the recipes. And it actually gives you 6 different methods for entering contacts. I want to give you one shortcut. And that is creating a contact from your call history. Okay? All right, so what do we mean by this? Well, whenever you make a phone call, your iPhone will capture your call history. And so you see that. Yeah, I'm sure you've all seen it. If you go into the phone app, what you're looking at on my screen on the right-hand side is you are looking at my recent call history. And in fact, you remember I just made a conference call just a few minutes ago? There is Susie, there is Sally Student that are in my call history list. Take a look at that third entry where it is just a phone number. All right, so this might have been a friend of mine who called me, and maybe I didn't answer it, maybe I did answer it, right? But that the fact that there is a phone number there means that there is no contact record for that person. So I look at that phone number, the 612-688-1110, and by the way, don't call it, it's a telemarketer. All right, for sure it's a telemarketer. But if that number happens to be somebody that's associated with a friend or a family member, what I'm saying is I can create a contact record from that phone number. All right, and so this is what it looks like on the slide on the left-hand side. Step number one is you go into your recent calls. Step number two, you tap on the circle I for the phone number that you want to capture. So I go down and I tap on the circle I. And if you notice at this point, sorry, I got to go back one screen. At this point, you have a screen that is like a blank contact record. But the big thing that you're getting is that you do not have to re-enter the phone number. And I can actually go down and click on the item that says create new contact. I now have a blank contact record. The phone is already entered because it pulled that off of the call history. And all I have to do is type the name of the person. I just happen to know that this is Bill Olson. And at this point, if I had an email address, I could enter it. But the thing that I wanted to stress is this is done enough so that I can go up to the upper right-hand corner and tap done. And I now have a contact record for Bill Olson. Very easy. So here's the point. Instead of having to enter the full name, telephone number, if you have somebody showing up in your call history with a phone number without a name, you can tap on the circle I. You can then say create new contact. That's what you see on the slide on the left. Tap on that, you get a blank contact record, and the end result is a very quick way to enter a contact record. Okay? Now, so that little tip came directly from as a follow-up to one of the questions that I had at the very first live session, and that would have been, actually a week ago today. So this is session number 3. All right, so let's review what we learned today. First, we took you down a journey of doing a conference call. And if you can remember the conference call 2-step, you've got it. Add call, merge call. And you can make a conference call with up to 5 callers. One of the questions that's going to be on the final test is what is the cost for doing a conference call with the iPhone, right? And then the second topic is I wanted to give you a tip as a follow-up to one of the questions from last week's session. I wanted to give you a tip for entering a contact from a call history. That's not the only tip. If you want to learn more about entering contact records, go back to the Live 3 screen. Let me just go back. You go back to this screen. Move this out of the way. You go back to this screen, and you can now scroll down to the bottom here to a recipe that says adding and finding people in the contacts app. You click on that title, it will then launch the online information, and I promised you 6. There they are right there, 6 methods for adding contacts. All right, closing up for today's session. Thanks so much for coming in. Ever since I've had this COVID-19 response, where basically I was saying, I want to give back to our community of older adults. I want to help them stay connected and engaged with their iPhones. Since that time, I've had some really great response. I appreciate, I've got more than a full handful of people online at this point. Um, if you have follow-up questions, send me an email at questions@seniortechlab.com. I will get back to you, I promise. More information and the download is available on the Live 3 page that you see at the bottom. Actually, here we go. Back on the bottom of this page. And with that information, I am going to end this conversation just with a little tip about next Monday. On Monday, we're doing another session, and we are going to focus on the Mail app for sending and receiving email. Take a little different approach, though. I'm going to go on the assumption that most of you have sent and received email. So I'm not going to go through the process of sending a basic email. What I want to do is explore more advanced topics. I want to talk about how to manage your inbox. How might you create folders in your inbox? I want to talk about creating an email message with an attachment that might be a picture or it might be a document of some kind. I'm going to even point out how to format the text in an email. So there's a handful of topics that we want to explore. It goes beyond just the basics of that. All right, so with that process, we are done for the morning. Thank you so much for coming on by. You can go, finish up your morning routines now, and stay safe, stay well, wash your hands. We hope to see you next Monday.